Hi guys, so I'm finally doing it. I know I've been promising this video for probably about 3 months now, but I just finished the Dark Tower series earlier this month, and I was planning on doing this video sooner, but things got really crazy for me and my husband both, so I really haven't had a whole lot of time to film in the last couple of weeks since I did my mid-month kind of check-in. So anyways, this is going to be a series wrap-up of the Dark Tower series by Stephen King, and it consists of 7 numbered books and then a kind of filler novel. And the first book is The Gunslinger. Second book is Drawing of the Three. Book 3 is The Wastelands. Book 4 is Wizard and Glass. The filler novel, which goes between books 4 and books 5, is Wind Through the Keyhole. Book 5, Wolves of the Kala. Book 6, Song of Susanna. And Book 7, The Dark Tower. So I'm going to try and start this video off not spoilery, and then towards the end I'll kind of say something like, if you haven't read the series, click off the video. And if you have, you can keep going, and if you want to hear my spoilery thoughts on these books. But for the first part of the video, all I'm pretty much going to go over is my list of stuff that you should read before you read the Dark Tower series, and then my ratings that I gave it, and kind of a little sum up of my Goodreads reviews for these books. So, we're going to start off, obviously, with the first book, which is The Gunslinger. This is, of the official series, I think this is the shortest book in the official series, in the actual, numbered series. And I finished this one right when I started a Goodreads account, so I didn't really write a review for it. I did like it. I liked the narrator. I marathoned the audiobooks, and they had 2 narrators for the audiobooks. The first narrator they got to do the audiobooks did the first book, and then the last 3 books. I don't remember which author or which narrator read Wind Through the Keyhole, but of the numbered books, the first narrator did the first book, The Gunslinger, and then books 5, 6, and 7. On Goodreads, I gave this one 5 stars. And this was my second time through the audiobooks, and I think just being able to sit down and marathon these audiobooks kind of helped a little bit, because the first time I read through this series, I didn't even finish the second book, because the second book was just so... For me, it was really slow, and so me, it being a slow audiobook and me trying to do other things while I'm trying to listen to it, it just kind of fell away, and I never ended up finishing it. So I took kind of the time that I had to revisit these, and I really liked them the second time through, being able to marathon these books. So anyways, that's my thoughts really on the first one. It sets you up. It starts with Roland, who's the gunslinger, following the Dark Man, or in later books he comes to be known as Martin or Randall Flagg, or he's got several names that he goes by. Martin is what the Dark Man was known as in Gilead, which is where Roland is from. Randall Flagg is a reference to The Stand, so if you haven't read The Stand, don't read this. I'm just going to go off on a little tangent here. Read The Stand, Eyes of the Dragon, Insomnia, Jerusalem's Lot, and I think The Stand, Jerusalem's Lot, and Insomnia are the 3 big ones that you need to read. You especially need to read Jerusalem's Lot before Wolves of the Kala, because that whole, like, I hadn't finished Jerusalem's Lot before I got to that book, and it spoiled it for me. Completely and totally just spoiled it. I'm still going to read it, or audiobook it, but it just spoiled the whole Jerusalem's Lot experience for me. So definitely The Stand, Insomnia, and Jerusalem's Lot. There's a small reference in this one to Eyes of the Dragon, which is one of his standalone fantasy-heavy novels. But it's not, like, imperative to the story. I'm trying to think of what else. There's, in the last book, there's a lot more references to his other books, like Hearts in Atlantis. There's a small reference to that. I think it's The Long Walk. There's a small reference to that. It's just, like, the titles pop up is all. And they're not, like, imperative to the story. It is another one. So those 4. It, The Stand, Insomnia, and Jerusalem's Lot. Read at least those 4. And I know all 4 of them, well, really, the 3 of them, Jerusalem's Lot, is not really a huge chunker of a book, but I know the other 3 are. And I know that's a lot to take on, but trust me, you'll appreciate the Easter eggs throughout the series a lot more if you read at least those 4 first, because I had read It and The Stand before this, and every time those little Easter eggs popped up, I was like, oh, I know what that's from. So I really wish I would have finished Jerusalem's Lot and read Insomnia before I had started this series, but I didn't, so I just kind of ruined that for myself. So just so you guys don't ruin it for yourselves, if you really want to invest in the Dark Tower series, definitely check out those 4 books before you start into this one. Moving on, the second book, Drawing of the Three. This picks up pretty much immediately after the first one ends. This is where, I don't know if I should say this because I don't know if it's a spoiler or, he gets, this is where the quartet comes from. That's all I'm gonna say. It was alright. I liked this one. I liked the narrator. I think his name was Frank Muller, that read this one, Wastelands, and Wizard and Glass. I liked him better than I liked the other narrator because he did better voices, but other than that, this was probably the slowest book in the series for me because there was a lot of walking and a lot of just walking up the beach. Yeah, so this was probably the slowest book in the series for me. I gave it 4 stars. I gave it 4.5. I said in my Goodreads review that I preferred the narrator from the first one, but after hearing all of his voices, all of this narrator's voices for 3 books in a row, I decided I liked him better than the narrator from the first one. But that was about all I really said about this one, was that I liked the first narrator better, but then I continued on and I ended up liking Frank Muller better than the other narrator. Next, The Wastelands. This one, was this one the one where he was talking about? No, this one, I feel bad because I can't really go in depth about what these books are like, without giving spoilers, and I'm trying not to give spoilers. This one picks up pace definitely for me. I gave it 5 stars. Looking at my review on Goodreads, starting to like the new narrator more. Does well with the different voices for all the characters. That's a spoiler, so I can't really say that. Several references. This is the one where the references to It come in. Because it talks the beams that hold up the Dark Tower and what the beams are named for. And at the end of It, trying not to spoil anything, there's a bit about a giant turtle at the end of It. And the giant turtle is one of the beams, holds one of the beams up that holds up the Dark Tower. So that's where the references to It start to come in. I believe this one also has references to The Stand. It's either this one or the next one that has references to The Stand in it. I can't remember. I didn't tab these. I didn't start tabbing until the very last book. So on my reread, I will tab these and probably do a better wrap-up type thing. But just as a generic kind of start to wrap-up. This one I also gave 5 stars. Like I said, once I got into this one, I started liking the new narrator more. I like how he ties his books together with just like small little things plopped into different books. And I think that's about it for this one. Next is the 4th book, Wizard and Glass. This one doesn't really have a whole lot of input as far as like the main plot line, but this one gives you more background on Roland, like some of the struggles that he went through as a, not quite like his late teens, like 16, 17 I think is how old he was when these events happened. But this gives you more background into like some of the struggles that he had to go through, and I'm not quite sure I don't remember if like Susan is referenced in the earlier books, but you learn who Susan is in this book, and it kind of goes a little bit into how Gilead and Inworld fell. So I think this is my favorite book in the series. And I'm pretty sure I gave this book 5 stars also. Yes, I gave this book 5 stars also. I want to say this one also has some references to The Stand. And you also learn more about Elen and Cuthbert, which are, I know they are talked about many, many times in both previous books to this and the later books. So it was nice to get some backstory on Roland and like some of the struggles that he went through when he was much, much younger than he is in the Gunslinger and in the present day. So, yeah, like I said, I think this is my favorite out of the series, and I gave this one 5 stars also. I think there's only like 2 books in the series that I didn't give 5 stars. Drawing of the Three was one of them. I only gave it a 4.5, and this next one I gave a 3.5, I believe, because I really didn't feel as though it was completely, I gave this one a 3.5. And that would be Wind Through the Keyhole. Now, I actually accidentally read the 5th one before I read this one, so I went back after I finished the 5th one and listened to the one. This is just like one of the stories that you get in here is another adventure that Roland went on when he was younger, and the other one is just one of like their fables, folk tales that they had in Gilead, and I really didn't feel like this was necessary. I mean, it explains what happens in the, like, 3 or 4 day gap between the 4th book and the 5th book, but, I mean, the 4th book and the 5th book transition so well from one to the other that you really didn't even notice that there was a 4 or 5 day gap. So I really didn't feel like this one was necessary. It was a good read. I liked it. I just didn't feel like it added anything to the series itself. So I don't really have much to say on that one. Book 5 is Wolves of the Kala, and you follow the quartet through every book, the full quartet, from the 3rd book on. So the quartet doesn't become full until the 3rd book. And I'm not going to say anything about how that happens until I get to the spoiler section of the video, which this video is getting really long already. So I'm just going to kind of like zip through this. And let me see, I gave this one 5 stars. I believe I gave Song of Susanna 5 stars also. And then I definitely gave The Dark Tower 5 stars. Okay, so, spoiler section, and I'm going to try and keep the spoiler section short, but I may start ranting at the end. So if you have not read these, stop watching this video right now, because I don't want to spoil things for people, so I'm putting in that spoiler warning right now, and it's going to go through the end of this video. Okay, so, spoilery things. When Jake gets brought back through to Midworld in the 3rd book, I was just like, I loved how Stephen King played that internal struggle in his mind between, like, the 2 voices saying, in his head saying, oh, I'm not dead. How can I be dead? I know I'm not dead. And the other voice contradicting him and saying, no, you are dead. You can't be alive. You are dead. And then how it's like translated over to Roland also, and just how that's and how that's written. I loved how that was written so well. I think that was part of probably my favorite aspect of the 3rd book. And then moving on to the 4th book, there's not really a whole lot of spoilery thoughts I have about the 1st and 2nd book. But moving on to the 4th book, what they did to Susan, how they burned her at the stake because of that witch. That hurt a little bit. Not as much as what I'm going to say when I get to the 7th book, but that did hurt a little bit. Like, I was sad. I was sad when Susan was burned at the stake like a witch, even though she wasn't a witch. She was a really nice girl. But yeah, that made me really sad. I don't really have a whole lot of spoilery thoughts about the 5th book. The 6th book, not really any spoilery thoughts on that either. The 7th book, though. You spend 6 books getting attached to these characters, and then they die in horrific ways. Like, Eddie was the first to go, and Eddie's death just was like, oh my god. Like, he got shot in the face, through the eye, and he just kept living, and he didn't die right away, and he suffered, and Susanna suffers with him, and it's just horrible. It's just so bad, and I started feeling disgusted almost about how Eddie's suffering was prolonged. It wasn't like detailed how his suffering was prolonged, but at the same time it was like, come on. Like, who survives for that long after being shot in the head? I mean, I know people survive and live from that, but still, I don't see how he could have survived that long other than it from being at sheer willpower to try and survive that, and then him finally just realizing subconsciously that he just couldn't survive that. And then Jake dies trying to save Stephen King. Okay, that's a spoilery thought for the 6th one. Stephen King kind of brings himself into the books. Like, he gets visited twice by Roland, from Roland switching worlds back and forth. And the second time, they go to save him from this stupid guy who's high off his ass, and driving a van and not paying attention, and is supposed to hit Stephen King and kill him with his van because he's not paying attention to what he's doing at that point in time. And so instead of Stephen King dying, Jake throws himself between Stephen King and the van and basically gets crushed. And he's just all calm about it, and Oi, their little Billy Bumbler furry friend that they pick up towards the end of the 3rd book, he's so depressed about it, and I just feel so bad for him, the poor guy. But that was the second hit. And then Susanna leaves Roland after she finds the door, after she figures out where the door marked unfound is. And that really wasn't so bad because I kind of saw that coming. Like, she didn't have Eddie anymore. Jake was gone. So she was kind of like telling herself and preparing herself for her own death, because she thought, okay, the others have died, now it's my turn. And then she just kind of leaves. And that kind of made me feel a little bit better about everything up to the very, very bitter end of the book, when Roland goes up the tower and gets to the top of the tower and walks through the door at the very top of the tower and ends up right back where we started. Come on! Like, I sat after the audiobook finished and after that portion was spoken for probably about 5 minutes just laughing and thinking, with all of the love that a reader can muster for one of their favorite authors, Stephen King, you are an ass. Like, why would you do that? You get these people, you get your readers so emotionally invested in this story and in these characters, and then you just get to the end of your last book and you pull this dick move on your readers and like, oh, it's just a big giant circle, so here you go, you can start the first book all over again. And it's like, what? So anyways, I'm gonna cut this off because this video has already gotten really long, and it's gotten longer than I had originally intended for it to be. So I'm gonna cut this off right here. Later on down the line, when I re-audiobook these and I actually sit down and tab all of them, because now I have physical copies of all of them, I may do another, like, better series wrap-up. But for now, this is going to be it as far as my Dark Tower series wrap-up, and I will see you guys in my next video.